All right, students, welcome to today's session of introductory MAT 2 session. Okay, first of all, let me congratulate you all for completing MAT 1. I hope you all did well. You learned all about application development using HTML, CSS, right? So, in this particular MAT 2, we'll focus more on improving, building upon that. HTML will still be there, CSS will still be there. Instead of rendering things directly using Flask, we'll go more into the JavaScript part. In this, so we'll focus more upon the JavaScript and then the framework. Anyone knows what a framework is? Any idea?
Built-in methods we can use to
Mhm.
incorporate in our project.
Yes. So, do you know?
Ready-made things. Ready-made
Yeah,
things.
ready-made things. So framework is like so when you're building a house, framework is like the pillars and all that you build things upon. So already you get the pillars. Now what you have to do is just make the walls, paint on it, put the electrical outlets and so on and so forth. So already you have a structure in place. You have to do what is to use that structure in order to build your own applications. That is what a framework is. Yeah, exactly. Flask is a framework. So you already have a lot of functionality inbuilt. You don't have to make everything from scratch. You use the functions, or we call it APIs. We use the APIs of Flask. For example, what we'll be doing here is Vue. Okay, so Vue is the front end framework what we'll be using. Okay, anyone knows the difference between framework and a library? So you have used libraries in data science like maybe PyTorch, NumPy, Pandas. Anyone knows the difference? Okay, no hands. All right. So basically, framework gives you everything that you need, and library is something that you import and use. So basically, both give you a set of functions, but one is a framework is like you have everything with you, and you use that framework itself. And library is a small functionality that you use, a particular functionality that you use. Okay, so that is
Uh,
not a much big difference.
is is
Yeah,
there
Surya.
any is there any example?
Yeah, libraries. I told you you have used NumPy's. That is a library. Pandas is library. Okay, so that is like you import it into your project and use. So if you want to make a graph, you use Matplotlib. Okay, you don't center everything, all your code around Matplotlib. You just use Matplotlib as one of the features.
So Matplotlib is a library.
Yeah, so that's the difference between library and a framework. So framework,
Sir,
yeah.
is framework similar to class?
So it's basically you can say it's not exactly like a class. So it can have a bunch of classes in it that you can use. Okay, but it's basically a full structure that you use in order to build your applications. So suppose you're using Flask. You have already used Flask, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So in Flask, what do you do to make models? You use Flask SQL Alchemy.
Hmm.
So Flask SQL Alchemy is something that Flask itself has inbuilt. You don't make your own models from scratch. You use Flask SQL Alchemy to build your models. Similarly, to have routes, you use the inbuilt routes. You don't do everything from scratch. You use Flask specific APIs in order to do that. All right.
Okay. Yeah,
Hmm.
got it.
All right. So I'll just give you an overview of what this course is all about and what we'll be learning in this course. All right. Hmm. Yeah. Any doubts?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, I see your hand raised, Piyush.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Actually, I am completely new to this website. I have done like website for the first time. time in Mad 1. And I
Mm-hmm.
have done pretty much like HTML, CSS, and Flash from the different licenses.
Adarsh, can you mute yourself? Yeah.
And
Piyush, can you repeat the last thing? Your
actually, I have done WordPress for the first time ever in my life in the Mad 1. And I have learned pretty much HTML, CSS, and Flash from the course itself, like from the live sessions
mm-hmm.
mainly. So regarding the JavaScript and Vue.js, should I stick to the live sessions for learning, or should I like explore some external resources? Because I have like the time limitation. Because I have
Mm-hmm.
two projects and another three theory subjects to cover this time. That's why I am asking you.
Yeah, so you should go ahead. So in this course, right, we expect you to look for additional resources apart from our uh, whatever we have recorded in our course content. Apart from that, you have to look at additional resources. So
No, no.
it's
By additional resources, I am looking for like, should I rely on like live sessions or should I go to YouTube and learn from other stuff? Because that is very much hectic to search each stuff and learn despite having this many courses and projects.
So I would say go ahead with like the live sessions, and which part do you don't understand, search on YouTube and then follow that.
Okay, sir.
Okay, but the live sessions are pretty long, so that will be a little time consuming for you. So you can skip
So
ahead
it
and
will
whatever
be
you understand,
it,
then skip
it
over
will
that.
be
Yeah.
it will be helpful, I guess, for scoring marks. For last time I was dependent upon live session from everyone as well as lecture, but more than the screencast, I was dependent upon live session, and it
Yeah,
was
yeah. So
helpful.
live sessions are very helpful in that.
And sir, regarding screencast, should I watch them after the live session or before the live session?
No,
Because
before the live sessions, you watch the screencast because we'll be following. So since when you have your week one, after the release of week one, we'll have the live sessions. So we'll expect some of you at least to go over the screencast as well as the recordings, and then so we can discuss more better on that. So you'll have a higher level of understanding.
because in Madon I saw the like screencast first and attended live session. Screencast were too much heavy, like too much information contained in small amount of time. So it's very difficult to keep up the pace. But in live session, I was like coding alongside the instructor. It was
Yeah.
like easy to understood and easy to keep the pace.
Yeah, so just go. What you do is go with the screencast, and then whatever you don't understand, ask in the live sessions. That'll be best for you. All right.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Hmm. And Lee Johns.
Hi, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
So, just to understand more about the framework versus libraries or packages,
Yeah.
can we say that the framework is like if we implement a framework, that would be the core of our program,
It,
whereas the packages or libraries are just like it is kind of like an input to
yeah, small functionality exactly. So that is the core of the application you're building. That is the framework because you're following that framework.
like,
Mostly, what happens is you're following the framework, and then you import certain libraries in order to have additional features. Okay, you're exactly right.
okay.
Okay, and regarding some information, so I am Aditya. I'll be one of your instructors. There are two more instructors. Adarsh sir, he is the lead instructor, as well as Abhishek sir. All right. So we three are the instructors for Mat 2, and
So,
you
and who
can.
will be doing the project sessions?
I'll be doing the project sessions. Aditya. Okay, let me share the screen and then.
Sir, am I audible? Excuse me, sir.
Oh yeah, I muted myself. Yes, you are audible.
Sir, basically you are saying that a framework is a collection of libraries. That's what it is.
it is a collection of, it can be a collection of libraries, not necessarily.
Oh, okay,
But
okay,
the
sir.
main
Got it.
difference is a framework expects you to build with that framework in mind. So all the code you're writing would be using that functionality of the framework itself.
Okay. Sometimes it can have a collection of libraries.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Got it, sir.
Like Flask itself, oh, no, not Flask itself. Like Flask, what it uses is like it's called a micro framework. It uses small different extensions for different things. Like we talked about Flask SQL Alchemy. So it uses that for ORM. It uses something else for RBAC. For login, we have Flask Security, and so on. Okay, it can be a collection of different framework, different libraries.
Got it, sir. Got it.
Yeah, so Abhi had a question. Is it compulsory to go through lectures or live session plus screencast would be enough? So it's definitely recommended to go through lectures first and then go through live sessions, because live sessions are more tailored towards the students we have right now, and screencast is for everyone. Okay, so it's better to ask questions directly in live sessions, as well as you need to watch lectures anyways, because that is covered more detail. Everything is covered in more detail there. All right, so we have in our week one. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in our week one, we had discussed about backend and front end. So backend and front end, are you guys familiar with?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
sir.
Yes, sir.
Can anyone
Yes,
answer
sir.
what is backend?
Backend is
Uh,
like
Storage.
It handles the business logic in the application.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah, so how our data is being stored, how the business logic is being done. So some computations, all the business logic, everything, and the data that is being transferred. And front end is what the client is seeing. Okay, so what my browser is showing, that is the front end. So in your MAD one, you did not separate the front end and back end in that sense. Like they were not different. They could not. They were served using the same Flask server. In this course, we can convert it into a front end particular thing, that is our view, and the back end that will be a Flask. All right. And we have okay. So first we'll go through the JavaScript syntax. Okay. So just to warn you guys, JavaScript can be a little tricky. So has someone experienced JavaScript, the trickiness of JavaScript? Okay, so if you have not, it can be a little tricky. So you'll have to put in the effort in this. Okay, first 2 weeks is JavaScript. Admittedly, that's a very less time to learn JavaScript. But since you have already learned a programming language, you already know Python, you have already gone through MAD 1. So we expect you to go through JavaScript. So the resources I would be suggesting you is first of all MDN docs. So this is very detailed. So it's very hard to go through everything in this. All right. So in MDN docs, you can go to references and go to JavaScript. And this is very detailed. Everything will be here. But the problem is you can't go through each and everything in here. So what I suggest is going through JavaScript info, this website. Okay. So this is a very nice website. I'll share it with you. So just to be ahead of the curve, you can go through this. Yeah, Lee John, let me mute. Okay, yeah. So you can go through this website. This has a very good structure in place. You can go through the JavaScript parts in here, and it will also warn you about some of the weirdities JavaScript can have. Okay, and anything that you don't understand, you can read it in MDN docs. So MDN docs is our, basically that is the single source of truth for us. If something is said in MDN docs, we expect that is the right thing. All right. And then we have so basic. When you're learning any language, the first things you go through is variables. Okay, what types of variables we have. Then we have the how to declare variables and what are the data types, and then operators, and then one specific JavaScript specific thing, DOM. What is DOM? Anyone knows?
Document object manipulation.
Uh, Not
Model,
manipulation, it's
model,
model.
model, sir,
Sorry.
model.
Okay. So what exactly is that? Is basically the representation of HTML page as an object. All right. So you can manipulate, you can add things inside JavaScript using that full DOM. So I'll go into more details when we go into that. But the whole web page, from the HTML start tag to the body and whatever is inside it, script tags, everything, that is converted as a object, and that object can be manipulated, can be accessed using JavaScript. So that is one particular thing specific to JavaScript. Okay, and then we have coercion. Coercion can be very tricky. So coercion means like so what JavaScript does is tries to change things in the fly. So suppose if I want to check a string 1 is equal to a integer 1. So it will check. So I should give an example here. Okay, let me just go through that and then I'll tell you how to run JavaScript. Okay, and then we have objects, loops, if else statements, arrays. Okay, these are the simple things that all programming languages have. So something specific to JavaScript is these things. Yeah, so hoisting can be a little tricky. We'll go through that. And then we have the DOM interaction, that is JavaScript specific. All right, all these are document APIs. Yeah. Ask your question.
So what is hoisting?
Hoisting is like, have you heard of flag hosting? Rising it up. So we'll go in more detail. You can read it up on that. I don't want to go into detail right now because it will confuse some people. Just read upon that hoisting. So basically what happens is you can use functions before they are declared. Okay. So you can call a function before they are declared, but in case of variables, they create some weird things. So var is hosted. Functions, the data type, the data declared with var is hoisted. And then it becomes undefined before it is actually initialized. Okay, so these might seem a little bit weird right now, but it's pretty easy when you go through it. All right. So yeah, so first let's show you where how do we actually run JavaScript, where to run JavaScript. So the simplest way would be just go here in any browser. I'll open a new window. Okay, just go into this and developer tools. Okay, where is developer tools? Yeah, so you can go here to more tools and developer tools, and or you can have Control-Shift-I. Okay, so this is my developer tools. I can write my JavaScript code here. Okay, so the simplest one would be console.log. Okay, so this is console.log is like a print statement that you have in Python. It will just write whatever is given to it. Okay, I gave the string hello students, so it printed this out. Okay, so this is one way of quickly writing JavaScript. So all the web browsers have this functionality that you can write JavaScript in it. That is what makes JavaScript this beautiful, because you can directly access JavaScript from a browser. So browser can use JavaScript. That's why you can have all this functionality. All right, so this is one way you can use it. Another way would be making a file. Okay, yeah. So did anyone raise a query? Okay, yeah. So this would be the simplest way. Another way would you would run JavaScript file is make a file here, like make a file somewhere. Okay, so make a new file. Okay, let me open it VS Code. I hope you are familiar with VS. Everyone is familiar with VS Code. Already you have done Mad1. Okay. So another simple way of running it would be create a new file here. I'll name it index.html. So in HTML also you can run JavaScript code. Okay, you know the shortcut exclamation mark and enter. It will create a small structure for HTML. All right. So here you can have a script tag, and inside the script tag, whatever you write, that will be written as a JavaScript. Okay, so in here I can have another console.log. I hope you can see this. This is smaller than, yeah, so this is fine. So console.log. Okay, so whatever you write in the script tag would be written, would be run as JavaScript. Is it fine? And to run this, you just open this file. So I use live server. So live server is an extension in VS Code. So you can use that, or you can directly double click and run it from here. Okay, so if I double click and run it, you can see in the developer tools again, you can see hello. That came from this particular console.log. Fine.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
In JavaScript, both single quotation and double quotation works the same, or is there any difference in functions?
No, it works the same.
Okay. And okay, thanks.
Okay. So
Why
this,
didn't it show on page?
because we are running console.log, means it will output on the console, not on the page.
Okay.
All right. And so this is basically writing it in HTML. So if you want to write it in an external file, so generally what we do is write it in an external file. So you can have name it anything you want. I'm naming it app.js. You can also write it here. So to write it here, I'll just copy this thing. And then inside the script tag, you define an attribute src, and then tell what is the source. So that is app.js here. All right. So when I do this, this is linking this script to this app.js file. All right. So whatever I run in here, all right. So whatever I run from here, it will be reflected. Okay. If I open it now, I'll have to refresh it. So you can see hello from external file. All right. So it is very similar to how you run CSS, how you actually embed CSS. So you can embed CSS in style tag, or you can have it inside the href, right? Link it in an external file. So very similar to that. So one thing to note here is if I write a script here as well, if I give a attribute of source here, as well as if I give some code here, so what should happen? So what happens? It does not run this whatever is given here. Okay, so it only considers what is inside app.js. Okay, so even if I refresh it, you can see hello from external file. I don't get the console.log inside tag here. Okay, that is the only thing to note here.
Sir, how should I give the multiple JS file?
In multiple JS is very simple. You can have multiple app2.js here. and then create a app2.js here. All right.
So it give priority to JS file.
Yeah. So if any time you give a source attribute, it will always give you this attribute. Always run the file from the file. Okay, just give me a minute. Yeah. So we were here, right? So you can see you can have multiple source script attributes. Okay. So the only thing to note here is the second one is dependent on the first one. All right. Not dependent. I mean, whatever variables you have in the first one will be accessible by the second one, but not the other way around, because it runs from top to bottom. Okay, students. Can you hear me?
So can you say that again? The variable
So
accessibility.
Yeah. So yeah, Abhishek sir is here, so he'll be continuing with the session. Yeah, you have a doubt?
Yeah, so you just mentioned about like variables being accessible across external JS files. Like, can you talk about that again?
Yeah. So basically, so if you have some variables here, so suppose we have a var a equal to 10 here. All right. And then you want to console.log here. I named it a, right? Yeah. So since in this HTML you have from running from top to bottom. Okay. So in app1, this will be initialized, var a will be initialized. And then app2 will have the access to the a variable.
what if variable is declared by let keyword?
Even let keyword, it will still be there. Okay, so you can see 10 is displayed here.
But this 10 is that keyword.
Yeah, so even with let, it will still be there. We'll go more into detail about this global and local things, local variables in the next session. Today we'll just go through the overview. Okay, so even here when I refresh it, you can see 10 is available. Okay, so don't get confused right now. It's just that whatever was there in the first file, the order matters here, because at the end, what is happening? Everything is going into the HTML page. Okay, understand what is happening here. The script, whatever was happening, whatever variables, everything is there, will be added in this HTML page. Now this HTML has everything from the app.js. Now if you, the next step is everything from app2.js will be run in the script, in this HTML, sorry. So whatever was there in app 1 will be accessible to app 2, but not the other way around. Okay, understood?
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Hi, Aditya.
Yeah, Abhishek
Thanks
sir.
for taking the session till here. Maybe if you could allow, I could continue from here.
Okay. Yeah. So Abhishek sir will be continuing. I'll quit. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Aditya.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so just allow me a moment. Let me quickly join from the other image so that I could control the meeting. Hello, everyone. Can someone please quickly confirm if I'm properly audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Audible.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, first of all, apologies for the delay. I was supposed to be starting this session, but due to some delay, I just got late. So I hope Aditya would have already given you a welcome note. I would probably be repeating a few things that he has already done in his part. Uh, okay, let me first introduce you to the agenda for today's session. So the objective is to make you aware of all the concepts that will be taught as part of this second part of application development series. So that you can get an idea about what this course is all about. And of course, you get to know that what all things you will get to learn in this course and what all technologies you will get to work with. So this is going to be the agenda for today's session. We want to be touching upon a lot of technical stuff. At least for the sake of this session, we'll try to keep it simple so that those who are very new to the programming, have not touched JavaScript before, we will of course be doing everything right from the scratch, probably from the next session onwards. But we have dedicatedly kept this session so that we can appraise you about what this course is all about, and just to make you comfortable that we will be taking everything right from the scratch, even in case you are someone who is very new to all this. Let me quickly go through if there is anything for me in the chat. Can we share the link of the Mac2 EC revision file? I'm really sorry. I will not have the direct access right now to that revision file. Maybe if you could just post it on the discourse, I would be able to assist you there. Or maybe you could just shoot an email to me. I will share you the access link for that document. Okay, so first things first, I would like to congratulate you all for completing your Modern Application Development 1 course in this application development series. Since you have enrolled into this course, that must be clear that you have already completed your previous part, the first part of this series. So many congratulations to you for that. The project for the previous version might or might not be pending for all of you. So hopefully you will also be completing the project for the first part of this series soon. So let me first quickly give you a simple overview of what this course is all about. Firstly, let me tell you that this entire application development series that you see in this diploma level of this BS degree program, this is going to be one of a kind of a course where you will be learning a lot of practical stuff as compared to some theory courses that are generally taught as part of the college curriculums in technical as well as the graduation degrees. So as you have already gone through the curriculum for the application development 1 course, there the emphasis was a lot on the backend. Of course, initially we started with a little bit of HTML, CSS so that you guys can understand that what a front end of a web application is, and you should be able to build simple enough, or I would say, small front ends that should be able to, indicate some instructions to the user so that user can perform some actions. The major emphasis was on the backend, that how do you write a robust backend, how do you create APIs, how do you basically connect to databases, how do you implement security, authentication, things like that. These were the things that were covered as part of the application development 1 course. Again, I am emphasizing on the part that the focus on the first part or in the first part was majorly on the backend side. But what is going to happen in this second part of this application development series is the focus is going to be shifted towards the front end part. Here, we will be learning a lot of new things with respect to the front end. We will, of course, be learning how can we build interactive front end. And of course, the focus here is going to be on that how can we enhance the user experience. Now, whenever we talk about user experience, we try to provide as interactive interfaces as we can. And in order to build interfaces like this, which are very interactive in nature, we generally have to use a lot of JavaScript for that purpose. And especially for that thing, we will be introducing JavaScript front-end framework that is going to be Vue.js as far as this course is concerned. Of course, there are a lot of other JavaScript frameworks that are used for front-end development, like Angular, like React, which might or might not be popular than what we are using for this particular course. But what we find is that Vue.js, since we have taken it as the preferable choice for teaching this course, just because it gives us some flexibility, it gives us some ease in order to teach some concepts of front-end development that might not be too easy if we right away start with other frameworks, say React.js, which is assumed to be one of the most popular frameworks for front-end development, especially with JavaScript, right? So this course is of course going to be of 12 weeks as any other course in this diploma level or in this PS degree. And each of this course is going to be introducing some new concepts for you, and we will be gradually increasing the complexity. That means from the very first week, of course, we won't be putting all of the things forward. We will be starting with a JavaScript refresher, or you can say some introduction of JavaScript for those who are very new to this particular programming language, because we understand that many of you might not be coming from the technical backgrounds, and all you know is the learnings that you have gained from the modern application development one course, first part of this application development series. So, of course, we will try to, uh, equip you with all the essential or the basic concepts of JavaScript that are required for you to get started with frameworks like Vue.js. And as I am saying that Vue.js is going to give us that flexibility, that ease in order to teach certain concepts that React.js might not. So of course, things will probably be easier as compared to other frameworks. So if I try to give you a week by week overview, maybe I'll quickly share my screen. I'll open a paint screen and I'll try to tell you what all things will be covered as part of which week. So please allow me to share my screen. All right. So shall I assume that my paint screen is visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So now that I have already appraised you about that, this is going to be the second part of this application development series. In the first part, the major focus was on the backend, and here we are going to be shifting our focus from backend to the front end. Remember, I am saying that we are going to be shifting our focus. It's not like we will entirely be doing front end here in this course. No. Of course, the initial few weeks, or I would say the first half of this course, probably up to week 6 or 7, will entirely be focusing on the front end part of a web application. But as we'll move forward into the course, like as and when we reach the week 7 part, we will deep dive into the backend again. I mean, we will be learning some additional technologies on top of what you have already learned in your first part of this application development series. So if I talk about what all things we'll be covering as part of this course, so okay, let me see if I can take a better marker. Yeah, this is better. So the first 2 weeks, the weeks 1 and 2, they are going to be entirely JavaScript based lectures. That means in the first 2 weeks, we will be giving you the introduction to JavaScript, introduction to JS, plus we'll be talking about essential concepts. We'll be talking about how a JavaScript program actually runs, execution of JavaScript program. And of course, we'll talk about some of the common concepts that exist across the programming languages. These will probably be the things that will be taught as part of the first 2 weeks. So here, the entire focus is going to be on teaching you the JavaScript basics. Because as I have been emphasizing on that, many of you might not be coming from the technical background and might be learning this programming language for the first time. So first 2 weeks will completely be dedicated towards teaching you what actually JavaScript is and how can you get yourself started by coding in JavaScript. By now, we are assuming that you can code sufficiently well in Python language. Now, we want you to develop the same kind of proficiency for the JavaScript language as well, because this entire course is going to be based on JavaScript. Of course, we'll be learning about backend as well, but the major focus is going to be on the front end side. Okay, so this is going to be the agenda for the first 2 weeks, right? Of course, we'll be talking about history and all that, how this JavaScript language came into the picture, how this got evolved, and etc. Things like that. But as far as the live sessions are concerned, we will mostly be concerned about the practical implementations. So right from the next session onwards, we will jump into the actual implementation of JavaScript. We will start writing programs in JavaScript straight away, right from the next lecture onwards. Okay. After teaching you some basics about JavaScript, which are sufficient for you to get started with frameworks like Vue.js in JavaScript, we will move to week 3. And in week 3, we will talk about the front-end implementations. We will first talk about the designs, the kind of designs that you can adapt to while building any kind of front-end. So here we'll be talking about front-end implementations. And we will be learning about different kind of states that an application can have. So here 3 kind of states that we'll be talking about majorly are going to be system, application, and you can say temporary or a state that is known as ephemeral state. These are the 3 kind of states that we'll be talking about. And in the same week itself, we will be showing you a demo with Vue.js. So the purpose of showing you demo even before officially getting started with the framework is so that we can put forward that what are the capabilities of this framework are, like what all things can you actually do with the help of frameworks like Vue.js. Of course, the similar things could also be done with other frameworks like React.js, Angular, etc. But the objective of providing you a demo before starting before officially starting the framework, the teaching of the framework is so that you can at least get an idea of why are you learning that framework and what all things you will be able to build after learning very basics of any frameworks like this. So this is what will be done as part of week 3. After this, we will move to week 4. And week 4 is going to be the place where the framework will officially be introduced. So week 4 is going to be the introduction to Vue.js. One more important thing to note here is screencasts were integral part of they actually were integral sessions of the Modern Application Development 1 course also, and those were the things that actually gave you the practical knowledge of how could you get some things done. Because the lectures that you will probably be learning will probably teach you how to understand the concept or what the concept is all about. But the implementation of that concept will actually be given as part of the screencast or will be taught during the live sessions. In the same way, the screencast here in this course as well, that is Application Development 2, are going to be very essential as far as the practical implementation is concerned. Because the actual lectures will be focusing about or will be focusing on what the concept is all about or what you have to take back from that concept. But the actual implementation will be shown as part of the screencast or during the live session. So screencast will be must for each and every one of you, especially for those who are absolute beginners to these technologies, probably web development and all. All right. And in this particular course, the screencast will start from week 2 onwards. For especially week 1, there won't be any screencast. We will start providing screencast from week 2 onwards, but don't worry about that because the live sessions are anyway going to happen for every week. So week 4 is going to be the introduction to Vue.js, where we'll be teaching you about the basic stuff that this framework comes with, and we will teach you that how can you build a basic enough application by integrating a framework like this. There are 2 things to it. Whenever you are using Vue.js as part of your application, there are 2 ways you can integrate Vue.js in your application. One is going to be the CDN way. CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. That means what you are going to be doing here is you are just going to be including a script tag in your HTML, and this the inclusion of this script tag will give you the access to all the powers that this Vue.js frameworks bring for you. And another one is going to be the CLI part. The CLI part is the place where you will be requiring to download some additional CLI tools, and in order to create a new project, you will be required to work with command line assets or command line language. So since this thing is kind of a difficult one for beginners to begin with, that's why we will be going with CDN as part of this course. We will try to teach everything with the help of CDN, but there are actually going to be two versions for the Vue itself, because when this course was introduced for the very first time, Vue 2 was the default version. But right after the first term of this course, the default version of the Vue, it changed from Vue 2 to Vue 3. And now Vue 2 is going to be reaching its end of life soon. So we will have to migrate to Vue 3 in order to build any new applications that we are going to be starting. So the course videos might still be in the Vue 2, but don't worry about that, because the concepts between these two versions are anyway going to remain the same. There will be a little impact on the implementation end, and that implementation impact is going to be covered as part of the live sessions. That means our major focus during the live sessions will be to make use of Vue 3 over Vue 2. So all the live sessions that we will be organizing for you, we will try to use Vue 3 to the extent possible. All right. But if you want support for Vue 2, of course, that could also be provided. But the major focus is going to be on Vue 3 from this term onwards. Apart from that, as I was telling you, that there are two ways through which you can integrate Vue.js into your application. One is CDN, another one is CLI. Initially, just to teach you how you can get started, we will start with CDN, and right after that, we will jump onto the CLI part, so that you can also begin creating projects with the help of CLI. And when we are talking about Vue 3, it will be better that you make use of CLI. I'm not saying that if you are using Vue 3, you cannot go with the CDN part. Of course, you can do that too, but you should try to do it with the CLI part, and that is going to be the emphasis during the live sessions. Okay. So this is going to be all about week 4, where we will be giving you a formal introduction of the framework. That is going to be Vue.js. As and when we will move forward, so the next week is going to be it is going to be week 5. So week 5 is just going to be the continuation of what we have done in week 4. So in week 5, we will learn about additional concepts about Vue.js itself. Additional concepts, and one of those additional concepts is going to be how do you build components in frameworks like this, right? So whenever you are learning any JavaScript based framework, this type of architecture that these frameworks have, that is component based, is very, very helpful. Let me try to explain you what happens. I mean, what actually a component based architecture is. Assume that this is a web page for you that you are currently viewing on your screen, right? And what you do is, let's say you create a box here, a good looking box, and probably this is showing you some product details. Like, let's say this is showing you some fancy product image, this is showing you product title, this is showing you product price, some description about it, some reviews about it, some features about it, etc. Now, what if I want you to create an exactly similar box for a different product? That means I want you to create a similar element on the same web page, but with different details. Like, I want to have a different image for that product. Of course, the price will change, the title will change, the description will change, the ratings will change. Every other big thing will change. The only thing that is going to be common among these two different elements on this web page is that they both are following the same template. That means, let's say if I have used div, span, b tag, e tag, etc. I mean, whatever tags that I have used, they all are going to remain the same. It's just the information that each of this element is showing will become different. Now, if you don't know about component-based architecture, how would you actually go about doing it? What you would do is, whatever code that you have written for this particular box, you will simply copy that code and you will paste it once again, so that you can create a similar type of box on the same web page. Of course, you would populate it with some different details, so that it could indicate some other product with its original details. This is what you would originally do in case the component-based architecture is not introduced. So what you are doing here is you are doing repetition of code. You have already written, let's say, 100 lines of code in order to create this particular box or this particular element. Now you are going to be rewriting those 100 lines of code in order to create the same element. So you are repeating your code. Now what happens in component-based architecture is, when you define an element like this, you say that this is going to be one of my components. Let's say this is a component called C1. And whatever details that it is showing, let's say this element is showing this image, this element, etc. All of these things are going to be provided as inputs to this particular element or to this particular component. You can treat it as a function, right? A function which is going to receive some arguments, which is going to receive some inputs. Now, based on the inputs that the function is going to get, it is going to derive some different result. Let's say I am writing a function. I'm just writing a pseudo code. It is not dependent on any specific programming language. Let's say it takes two arguments, A and B. And all it does is it simply returns A plus B. Now, if I'm calling this function with the argument 2, 3, the result is going to be 5. If I'm calling this function for 3, 5, the answer is going to be 8. If I'm calling with 8, 11, the answer is going to be 19. The function is still the same. I am calling the same function every time, but I am getting different result. Why? Because this is the behavior, this is the nature of this function, that it computes the result based on the inputs provided. The same thing happens or applies for the component. You create a component, that means you just create a skeleton, like you define what all div tags, what all span tags, what all paragraph tags, or whichever tags you want to use in order to create a box like this. You simply fix that, and whatever information that they are supposed to be displaying, that will be provided as an input to this component. Now, let's say since we are calling this component with the name C1, so whenever you write C1 in your web page, this is going to show this kind of box with it. Of course, you will have to provide some inputs to it so that it can display the relevant information. But all I'm trying to say is that you are going to be preventing repetition of code. You have written the code in C1 only once, and you are calling the same function, or you are reusing the same component again and again by providing some different inputs. So let's say in order to create one such box, you call this function or you call this component once. In order to create another box like this, you create another invocation for the same component, and you provide different sets of it. In that case, it is going to provide you the same skeleton, the similar kind of box. It is going to look exactly the same as it was looking before the first box. It's just that the details that it is displaying are going to be entirely different. This will depend on the inputs that it will provide, just like a function. I hope you are at least getting what is the underlying concept that I'm trying to tell you here. We are not talking about how will we go about implementing it in actual, because right now I just want to appraise you about what a component-based architecture is. And this is one of the major advantages of using any JavaScript framework for front-end development. So that we get this flexibility. We write code once, and we can reuse that code any number of times. Now, I was just talking about replicating this box just once. Let's say if I want to replicate this box 100 more times on the same web page. So think about that. If one element itself is taking 100 lines of code, you will have to repeat those 100 lines of code 100 times, right? And what will happen is, if you try to create it in a component-based way, you will just write that 100 lines of code at once. And let's say you give it some name, say C1, and you will just write C1 100 times. You don't have to write 100 lines of code 100 times. You just have to write C1 100 times. That's all I'm trying to tell you. Are you able to visualize it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So this is what this is actually what a component-based architecture is. One of the major advantages of using any front-end development framework. Okay. Now, next, we are going to be moving towards week 6. Week 6 is the place where we will be teaching you about routing. Routing in a front-end application. I'm talking about routing in a front-end application. Of course, the way you would have done routing in the application development 1 course, or even in case you have built a project for that particular course, the way you would have done the routing is, it generally happens on the back-end end. Let's say you have an application that is hosted at abc.com domain. If you want to go to the sign up page, what happens is you go to abc.com/signup. In case you want to go to the login page, what you do is you say abc.com/login. You go to a page or a path that looks like this, and it gives you the result. It gives you the corresponding HTML that belongs to this particular sign up page or that belongs to this particular login page. What is happening in that scenario is, I'm talking about the tech stack that we have used for application development one courses. When you write or when you type this URL on your browser tab, this request goes to the backend, and the backend sees that if I have something available for this sign up path, it sees that if this application has something available for the sign up path, it hydrates the entire HTML. Now, you might have used Ginger template somewhere, in the HTML page that you have prepared for this sign up. So what backend is going to return to the browser is going to be the completely hydrated HTML. Let's say if you are using some placeholders, some mistake expressions in Ginger like this, the browser is not going to receive all this. What browser is going to get is it is only going to get the completely hydrated HTML. That means that could be directly rendered onto the user's web page. So that means any computations that are happening here are happening on the server end. The browser, all it is doing is just rendering the HTML that it is getting from the server. But what happens in case of routing on the front end is when you do something like this, abc.com sign up. In that case, the request doesn't go to the backend. This is handled at the front end level itself. When you say /sign up, this is handled at the front end itself, and the front end itself decides that if you are trying to go to the sign up page, what is the page that should be rendered on your screen. The request doesn't have to go to the backend, and the backend doesn't have to do all the computations for you. Can someone think of some potential advantages that this kind of architecture could give you?
Reduce the load on the backend server.
Sorry?
It would reduce the load on the backend server.
Yes, of course. It is going to reduce the load on the backend. Now, there is a special name that we use for these kind of applications, and that name is SPA. Does anyone know what is SPA?
Single page application, sir.
Exactly, it is single page application. Does anyone know what is the phenomena behind SPA or a single page application? How do we differentiate between an application which is an SPA or which is not?
Sir, in a single page application, there is only one single page that we made, and in our as needed we need we right add new components to that page, sir. Not another page. Only update in
Very
that
good.
page, sir.
Yes, very good. So let me try to give you a simple enough example. Let's say I try to go to any website, say,
Or sir, it's made so very fast to load our web page, sir.
that's true. Yeah, I'll come to that. I'll try to give you an example so that you can completely understand what is the difference between an SPA or an application which is not an SPA. Okay, just give me a minute. Yeah, all right. So now, if you look at this website, this is just a sample website that I have. Okay. So currently, this website has been loaded for me. Now, what happens is, if I hover
Sir,
on this
we can't
grid,
see the
so
screen. We can't see the web page. We are still seeing the paint.
sorry. Can you see this website now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is the simple application that I have created just to give you a simple demo here. That what is the difference between an SPA and an application which is not an SPA? So I have landed on the, okay, maybe I should share the entire screen. That would give you enough idea. So, Is my screen visible now?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to see the website?
No, sir, you're seeing the page.
Looks like there is some issue. Okay, let me share my entire screen. So I hope it should be completely visible now.
Yes, sir.
All right. So just look at this website. Very simple enough website. Or if I talk about the component-based architecture, so yeah, this is one of the proper example where I was trying to trying to make you visualize that. Think of a component, think of a box. So this is the perfect example for that. So let's say this is a box. Here, this is some sample image. This is some sample title. This is some sample description, and this is a common button that every box is going to have. Okay. Now, how many times this simple box is being rendered on this page? This is being rendered 6 times. So do you think I would have written this code 6 times? Maybe yes, maybe not. But in case this website is written with the help of a component-based architecture, then I would have written the actual HTML for this box only once, and I would have reused that code for creating multiple boxes. Right? All it is changing is the image. Only the data is being changed. Whatever tags or whatever skeleton I would have used for a single box, they all would have remained the same. Right? Now, let's say if I hover on the grades and let's say go to 3. Now, just look at this thing, which is actually getting loaded whenever I'm trying to navigate from one page to another. Let's say I go to grades once again. Just focus here. I go to grades once again. I go to 5. You can see this loading icon here. Whenever I'm trying to navigate from one page to another, you could see some kind of loading or some kind of
Buffering.
is kind of happening. Yeah, you can say buffering. Yes. So whenever you see something like this, or this buffering or this loading icon, that means that particular application is not making use of an SPA, because what it is trying to do is it is trying to load the HTML for the next page or the target page that you are trying to visit from the server itself. Right. But if I try to show you the example of an SPA that is present in the same website itself. Okay. So if I go to this, okay, now forget about this entire page. Just treat this. Are you able to see my cursor here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I'm hovering over this navigation menu. Just for a minute, assuming that this is not the actual navigation menu for this page, assume that this is the navigation menu for this page. And I have 3 links available here. One is chapter content, one is YouTube video, another one is quiz. Okay. We have already seen that if I try to move between these, I would say navigation links in the top navigation menu here, then the page is actually loading. Page is reloading entirely from the server side. But if I try to move here between these 3 links only, you will see that the page won't load. If I go to quiz, if I go to YouTube video, if I go to chapter content, do you see this buffering happening here? No. The
No,
buffering
sir.
is not happening. The reason is, especially for this page, or especially for this part of the page, that means starting from here, I have used Vue.js in order to construct this page. So that in case I will click here, this won't send a request to the server. It will be managed at the front end level. If I go to YouTube video, if I go to chapter content, all these things will be managed on the front end itself. So you will see that the buffering is not actually happening. So this is an example of a application that is serving as an SPA as well as not an SPA. It is serving as an SPA, especially for this navigation menu, but it is not serving as an SPA
So question here, sir.
But it is not serving as an SPA this particular navigation menu into the consideration. Yes.
So one question here. So now in this page, single page application, so does it mean that the content for all the 3-4 links down below have to be loaded onto the web page the first time?
No, not necessarily. What can happen is, as and when you click on this, you can make you can make an API call in order to fetch whatever data that you require, and you can fetch it in the background.
Okay,
Like,
so you're
see,
making an API
let me
call,
give you a very common or
API
very
call and
typical
getting
use
the
case.
data.
Sorry?
You're making an API call and getting the data back from the server.
Exactly. Yes. So I am only making on-demand calls. Try to understand the difference. I'm not trying to load the entire information at one place or at a single time. I'm trying to load the information on the demand. Just take the example of Facebook feed, or let's say Instagram feed. What happens is, of course, you have the flexibility to infinitely scroll vertically, even in Facebook feed or Instagram feed or whatever it is. But when you land on the Facebook or on the Instagram feed for the very first time, do you think that it is going to load the entire content for you on the very first time you hit that particular URL? No, of course not. As and when you will start scrolling, as and when you will end or reach towards the end of the page, sometimes you see that kind of loading or some kind of buffering that is happening. So what is happening at that point of time is, it is trying to load some additional content for you. But it is not actually loading the entire page for you. It is only loading some additional content for you. So they are the perfect example of SPAs, because they are not loading the entire page for you, but they are only loading additional content for you to view. And that content is being loaded in the background. Are you getting the point?
Yes, so the API has to be fast.
Yeah, means, as I said, means you can load that content asynchronously. It is not mandatory that as and when the user moves to a particular link, you have to show the entire content at that point of time itself. Since you know that the user will only be able to see this much of content whenever he will or she will navigate to this particular page, so you can load this much of content first, and then you will try to load the rest of the content asynchronously, so that the user experience is not happening.
Okay, got it.
All I'm trying to tell you is that the page is not going to be loaded entirely. Right? So this is what actually an SPA is. The full form is single page application. So this is what will be taught as part of this week 6. In addition to that, we will be talking about some storage APIs. Storage APIs in web, or I would say in web browser. Does anyone know about any storage API in web browser?
No, sir. It's first time.
Okay. So, well, just to give you an example, things like local storage or session storage are going to be the APIs for us, or are going to be the storage places for us, where we can store some data with respect to user, with respect to application. Right? Of course, what type of storages are there? What is the difference between each of these? These are the things we will be discussing whenever we will reach that particular. So this is what will be discussed as part of week 6. Okay. Now, moving further, we will move to week 7. Week 7 is going to be about store management. Though you might not be able to understand the actual problem here, and you will probably require a couple of apps to be built with Vue.js in order to understand what is the actual purpose of using store management. But anyways, I'll try to give you some basic sense about it. Now that I have already talked about on a very high level that what a component-based architecture is. What you are doing is you are creating a component and you are reusing that code multiple times whenever you require it, instead of writing the entire code once again. Now let me take that same web page again into the example. Let's say this is a box, this is a box, this is a box, and there is some, okay. Think about these are the products, and you are on the cart page. Let's say this is the cart page, and you are doing showing the subtotal here. subtotal. Right? I mean, whatever number of products that you will add in your cart, accordingly the subtotal will increase or decrease. Right? I mean, it will change. Now let's say what you have done is you have added 1, 2, 1. So you have added one quantity from this product, two quantity from this, or one unit from this product. Okay? It would have, it would be showing you some subtotal here, assuming say 1,000, 2,000, whatever it is. Right? Now, I am saying that this entire web page is actually built using a component-based architecture. And what happens in component-based architecture is the data that this component has is actually restricted to this particular component only. That means the data that you are using for this particular component is not going to be shared with the another invocation of the same component. Take this into the consideration. Let's say you have a function ABC, which takes two arguments, A and B, and it does something. We are not sure what does it do. What I'm saying is that if you call this ABC function with, let's say, parameter 2, 3, and you call this function once again with parameters 3 and 4, do you think that this invocation of the function, which is being called or invoked with the parameters 2, 3, and this one, which is invoked with the parameters 3, 4, do you think that both of them will have any kind of dependencies between them, or they will run independently?
I think it
They
will
will
run independently.
run independently. Yes. The same thing actually happens in a component-based architecture as well. Though the component is same, but you are using or reusing component multiple times. So the data that you have in this component is entirely different from this component, is entirely different from this component. But the subtotal that you are showing here is actually dependent on all these three components. Now let's say, of course, since you are on the cart page, so you will be getting that plus minus option so that you can increment or decrement the units or the quantity that you want to purchase for any given product. Each of this product is going to have. Now let's say you click on plus, that means you want to increase the quantity of this particular product from 1 to 2. In that case, of course, you can change this state because this state is specific to this component, that is fine. But you also have to change this state, I mean this information, this data that you are showing here on the top of this page. And the problem is that this information does not belong to any component. Instead, this information is shared among all these components. Right? So it actually becomes a problem when all the different, right now we are talking about different invocations of the same component. The story could be that you are using 10 different components entirely. That means, let's say if this is the component C1, which is being rendered thrice. Let's say you can have C2 component, you can have C3 component, you can have C4 component, all available on this particular web page only, and all of them are affecting this subtotal. In that case, this becomes a very difficult scenario for a developer to manage the information, to manage the data, because each of this component is capable of making a state change or making changes in the information that is being shown. Right? So what generally happens is, since the data that each of this component have is encapsulated, that means it cannot be used outside. Of course, there are ways through which you can make it available outside, but there is a long procedure for that. We will of course be discussing about those procedures, those mechanisms as well. But a simple way to tackle such type of problem is that you basically create a global store. You create a global store and you say that this is a global store which any component in this entire application can access. Now, let's say you have 10 invocations of C1, you have 2 invocations of C2, you have 50 invocations of C3, you have 100 invocations or 100 re-renders of the C4 component. No matter how many components you are dealing with, each and every invocation or every render of this component will be able to access this global store. So that means whenever you make an increment or decrement in the quantity of any given product, you can directly make changes to this global store. And whenever you are making changes to this global store, this information will automatically change. This is just to give you an idea that what actually a global store is and what actually state management is going to be. Of course, when we will deep dive into this particular concept, you will be able to grasp it more functional, because right now we are talking about overview level and use case might not still be crystal clear. The problem will actually be understood when you will develop at least a couple of applications with the help of Vue.js, and you understand that what is the problem for data that is being shared across the companies. So I would probably stop this store management thing right now so that it doesn't get complex with time. Of course, when the time comes, we will be deep diving into this system. This is just to give you a basic overview level, high level idea. I hope you would still have tried getting something, and probably you would have gotten some idea. Not entirely, but at least some part of it. Okay. Moving on to the next week, which is going to be week 8. Okay, so week 8 is going to be the place where we will try to make our system more secure. And here, right from week 8 onwards, the focus is again going to shift from front end to the back end. I'm not saying that the focus will entirely shift from front end to back end, but the major emphasis will start shifting towards back end from the week 8 onwards. So we will talk about authentication. Okay, so here we will talk about specifically the token-based authentication. Of course, I know it was touched a little bit in the previous version, in the previous version, in the application development 1 course as well. But we will be discussing in detail about token-based authentication when we will reach week 8, so that we can make our systems more robust. This is going to be, the contents of week 8. After week 8, we will reach week 9. And week 9 is the place where things will start getting more interesting, because we will talk about asynchronous task execution. Asynchronous task execution. Right? And here we will be introducing another backend framework, not actually backend framework, but actually a Python package. Yeah, maybe it is well qualified to be called as a framework. The name is Celery. Celery. This is a Python-based task queue implementation. I'll just tell you that why will we using it. Whenever there is some high computation task that you need to perform as part of any given user action, then instead of doing it in the main thread, instead of doing it on the main application server where your actual application is deployed, what you would generally want is such type of tasks should be transferred or should be given to some other, I would say, system which is specially being maintained for executing such type of tasks. Let's say there is a task that is going to go all the way up to say 1 hour, 2 hour, or something like that. I'm just taking an example. Then of course you would not want to do it on the same thread or on the same server where your application is actually running. Otherwise, it is going to be a very bad user experience. Like, user has to wait for this much of time in order to get the response back, right? So instead, what happens is you get the request from the user, you understand what task is supposed to be executed, and you dispatch this task to some other system, which is going to be the Celery system, which is dedicatedly created for executing such type of tasks. But the thing is, you don't require the user to be waiting for this particular thing. You immediately return to user that we have gotten your request, we are working on your request, and we will let you know as and when your task gets completed. We will notify you via a notification, via an email, or something like that, right? So on a very high level, asynchronous task execution is what we will be learning as part of week 9, and we will be introducing another Python-based framework, Celery, in order to accomplish that. Okay. Along with Celery, we will be requiring some data stores like Redis. So just to talk about Redis, Redis is just like a database, or I would say it is in-memory database. A database is what? Where we actually store some data. And in Redis, we store data in the form of key value pair. Just like you create dictionaries in Python, similarly, you create data in Redis like this. The data must exist in the key value pair. In the key value format. It is not going to be a relational kind of database like you have studied about MySQL, Postgres, etc. It is going to be a key value pair based database The more details will be given when we will reach this particular. So this is what we will be learning till week 9. Moving forward, we reach week 10. And in week 10, we will be studying about things like webhooks and say SSEs. The full form is server-side events. Okay, maybe I won't go much into the technical stuff for these two, specific concepts, as it is probably possible to build, an entire course on each of these concepts separately. So the webhook is nothing. It is just, an information that you want to get from some service that you are using. A very typical example is going to be a payment gateway service. Let's say you are developing an application where you are integrating some payment gateway. Let's say Razorpay, let's say Stripe, or whichever payment gateway you want to go with. Now, whenever you are integrating any of that payment gateway, what happens is when you ask the user to make a payment, you actually rely on a webhook call. A webhook call is basically nothing. It is an API call that the servers of the service that you are using. Let's say if you are using Stripe service, payment gateway. Whenever a user makes a payment, the Stripe server is going to be calling one of the API URLs or one of the API endpoints that you would have configured in your Stripe account whenever a payment is successful or whenever a payment is failed, or in order to just notify you that what actually happened with a payment that just got started with this particular client. So let's say the user is initiating a payment. Since you are not maintaining that service, you don't know whether the payment was successful or not. Only the Stripe knows that. And in order to share that information with us, Stripe actually calls one of the API endpoint that we are going to be providing them. And that concept is known as web. This is not a hard code concept. Name. This is just a convention. Like, of course, more details will be given when we will reach this thing. As I know, things are getting more technical because, as I said, as and when we will move forward into the course, things will start getting complex. And SSE is server-side events. So simply, what happens is, let's take the example of YouTube. Okay, so what do we use YouTube for? We use YouTube in order to consume information, in order to consume content. Let's say you like some of the YouTubers. What do you generally do is you subscribe to their channels. And what happens is whenever they post a new video, YouTube gives you a notification that a new video has been uploaded by someone who you have subscribed. So this is, probably one of the examples of server-side events where what is happening is the information is coming from the server and it is going to the client side. And in case you guys know about the QuickBuzz application, QuickBuzz, so it is simply application that just keeps you informed about the recent matches that are going on. It gives you a detailed, report about, what is happening in each over, ball by ball description and all. So when you open this website and when you go to any particular match that is currently running, now what happens is that it is providing you ball by ball details that what is actually happening. Now, what will be happening here is after some time, this page will automatically reload. Why? Because match is of course progressing, and even if I don't refresh this page, the information will actually be sent from the server. And since I am a client, I am currently, watching for that information. I am waiting for that information to come at my end. The information, as and when it comes, my web page will automatically be updated with that particular information. So this is basically server-side event where there is a constant stream that is being maintained between the server and the client. That means there is a long-lived HTTP connection that is between the client and the server. And whenever the server wants to push some information, it pushes to the client, and client accordingly updates its, UI, the interface. So this is just a very basic overview of what, server-side events are. I know webhooks and SSEs might not be very clear, but as I'm telling you that this is just a general overview, and you will get more ideas about the implementation, about the concept, when we will reach that particular view in action. Moving on to the next week, it is going to be week 11. Week 11 is going to be focused on caching. So caching, why do we use caching? Can someone tell me? Does anyone have any idea about why do we use caching?
Basically for performance enhancement.
Exactly, of course. We use it for performance enhancement. So what happens is, let's say if there is a request, or let's say there is a web page that user is requesting. So the server is going to create the HTML for that particular request. It is going to return that to the client. And what it is going to do in addition is it is going to cache that particular web page so that if any other identical request comes, it doesn't have to compute all the things once again. It can directly serve that particular response from the caches. So what is happening is you are saving some resources on the server end and you are improving the performance. Of course, the time also will get improved. Let's say if the computation that you did actually took 1 second, and let's say it took one second, so the user would have to wait for 1 second. But when the identical request will come once again, you don't require again 1 second to put over it. You simply serve the request from the cache, so it will be instant. It will be almost immediate, right? So you are saving some server-side resources as well. In addition to that, you are of course improving the performance. You are enhancing the user experience. This is what will be taught as part of week 11. Coming on to the last week will not be so much of practical oriented. Even the project that we'll be talking about will probably require you the knowledge till week 11. Week 12 is going to be more of theoretical side, where we will talk about privacy and security in web applications. Privacy and security. We will also talk about cross-origin resource sharing, maybe something that you have already studied in application development 1 course, but we will be discussing this once again in the last week of this modern application development 2 course. So this is going to be a brief overview of what each and every week of this course is going to bring for you. All right. So at this point of time, I would take a pause and I would be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have for me. Does anyone have any questions? Anything with respect to course? Any general doubt that you may have?
If you have to do the project, I mean, do we have to use all these concepts, or when can we actually start doing it?
Okay, so you are asking about the starting point. Which week is going to give you the starting point, is it?
I mean, which is a good point to start? I mean, which all concepts? Because if we try to wait to do all the concepts, then we may not be able to do the project, right?
I would suggest you to wait till week 4 and 5, because till week 4 and 5 you would get enough idea about Vue.js framework and of course the SPA nature of it as well.
Okay.
So till week 5 you will be in a favorable position to get started with the project. I mean, if you are an absolute beginner, in case you already have some idea about these technologies that we are teaching here, I mean,
no, absolute beginner.
Be ready to get started with. So in that case, week 4 and 5 would be a suitable point for you to get started.
Okay, thank you.
What is the best way to study this course?
Best way to study is to watch all the screencasts. As I also told in the beginning of this session, that please don't ignore the screencast. Don't consider those as the secondary content, secondary lectures. They are the integral part of this course. Please watch all the screencasts that whichever are being released as part of any week, and try to implement every concept that is being taught as part of the screencast by yourself with some different examples. We will be providing you with some practice exercises as well, probably with each week. But of course, it will entirely depend on you that how much you are actually practicing with it. So if you are keeping yourself updated with all the screencasts that are being released with each week, and you are able to implement at least one example for every concept that is being taught, I don't think the course will be a tough job for you to crack.
Okay, and do we code in live sessions?
Yes, of course, we will.
Okay.
The sessions will be on Tuesday and Saturday only.
Yes. So we'll be having 2 regular sessions for this course. One is on Saturday, another one is on Tuesday.
And what about TS sessions? Is there any?
Right now, I'm not completely aware about that TA thing. So I'll have to get a confirmation about that. So probably I'll give you a confirmation in the next session.
Okay.
So is it possible to conduct the session from 8 instead of 8:30?
Sorry, I could not hear you. Could you please repeat yourself?
Is it possible to conduct the session from 8 instead of 8:30? Because I believe most of the
Really, no.
lecture will
Your
be
voice
in 2
doesn't
hours.
seem to be very clear to me. Your voice doesn't seem to be very clear to me. I don't know if that's the case only with me or
Hello, sir. Am I audible now?
that's better. Yeah.
Sir, is it possible to
Yeah, go ahead,
conduct the
please.
session from 8 instead of 8:30? Because the lectures, I assume, is going to be more than 2 hours because they are technical concepts. Many students might have many difficulties, so I believe it will go more than 2 hours. So it will be very late night till 11 p.m. So is it possible to like shift the session set to
It will
start
be
from
very
8?
difficult to change the timings at this point of time, because if we change this timing, this will probably clash with some other course.
So most of the classes have like times from 6 to 8 or 7 to 9, but from 8:30 I don't believe any classes will be there.
Yeah, we can probably move it to 9 p.m., but I think 8 p.m. will be very difficult.
PDSA classes also like that.
Okay, PDSA also starts from 9 p.m., is it?
Yes, sir. But
Yeah, so
on another day, not this day. Sir, my question is, in MAD 1, there's a lab assignment thing. Is it also?
so see, in MAD 1, the live assignments were actually graded, but here they won't be graded. You will be having some JavaScript-based programming questions for the first couple of weeks, which will actually be graded. But the lab assignments, or I would call them practice assignments in this particular course, because they are not graded in nature. As I was telling you that we will be providing you with the additional practice exercises, but they won't be graded, like in MAD. So we'll be sharing a generic problem statement. Like we will tell you that you have to build a web page like this, which does this. We won't tell you that the web page should have these many components. The ID for that component should be this. Like it used to happen in AppDev 1 part, because that every assignment was graded and it has to go through, an evaluator, which is of course automated, and all those things are mandatory. But here we won't be having those things. Only the first 2 weeks will have some programming assignments. I hope this answers your question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got it.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone else? Anything if you want to raise? Okay. All right. So in case there are no more queries to be asked, since this was just the first session of this term for this particular course, we kept it, a kind of on the easier side, instead of directly deeping dive into the technical stuff. We just thought of giving you an high level overview of what this course is all about, and we will start the technical stuff from the next session onwards. All right. So in that case, we'll see you in the next session. Till then, bye bye. Take care and have a good night.
Good night, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good night.